how would you describe Hypersub in a simple way so everyone can really understand what is so unique about Hypersub and what you're really trying to build, following up on the thesis that you just talked about?
Yeah. So there's two sort of facets to Hypersub. The first is that it's time on chain. That's the simplest explanation, is that you can mint time. So when a creator deploys a Hypersub NFT, they say, it's $10 per month. Whereas, a regular NFT would just say it's $10 and it's this one-time discrete payment. With Hypersub, it's basically saying it's $10 per month. And the way that works, practically, is that when I go and I mint 1 month, say for $10, I have a balance of time, and that time is on chain. So I have, and the base unit of time is 1 second. So basically I have 1 month's worth of seconds that's on chain. And as time passes, my balance of seconds decrements every single second until it gets to 0. And so at the end of the month, if I don't mint another month, then whatever perks and benefits have been granted to me by the creator will be revoked. So whether that's group chat access, airdrops, IRL events, URL events, whatever, my membership is essentially ends unless I mint more time. So that's like, it's a very simple protocol. It's just like, you can think of it as like an NFT with a clock. And the way that you add time is you keep minting more time. And as long as you have, a balance of time, then you have access. And as soon as the clock strikes 0, you no longer have access. So people have been using this for art subscriptions, for membership clubs, to gate access to software, podcasts, music, writing, all kinds of things. People are gating access to all different sort of perks and benefits. The second sort of big piece is that when the creator deploys a Hypersub NFT, is they can allocate a percentage of their revenue into a reward pool, and they can then share that with their top subscribers. So the earlier you subscribe and the longer period of time you subscribe for, the more of that reward pool you get. So it's a way for creators to kind of, share in the upside and reward their most supportive subscribers.
And curious about this. So what are some, because you mentioned there's also different kinds of use cases and all kinds of creators in Hypersub. What are some examples of use cases and creators that really stood out for you, and maybe their success story even blew your mind of is this even possible with Hypersub, and they just figured it out that way?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say there's 3. So of all the kind of categories of use cases that have emerged, the one that really, when I first heard of it, I was like, wow, that we didn't consider that when we built this. But it's actually 0x Designer who said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a design subscription, and I'm going to cap it to only 3 people can mint this. And when they mint it, they're going to automatically get added to a Discord, and they can submit requests, and I'll complete the requests. And I'll continue to do that for as long as their subscription is active. And it was like, oh, wow. And so those 3 minted out pretty fast. We minted one. We tried it as an experiment, and, he did design work for us. And it was like a couple people offered to buy it from me because it acted as a kind of option on his time. And so a few other people started doing that as well. It's like this kind of freelance case. So Antimo started doing that as well. He's done a design subscription. I mean, and both of them, they've made tens of thousands of dollars on Hypersub doing this. So that was that sort of shocked us. It's really high price point. It's really high price point, but low volume. There's not a lot of people doing this, but the ones that are spending quite a bit of money. So that was shocking. That was wow, this is a really cool idea that you can tokenize time. People are already doing that. That's literally what freelance work is. You're essentially exchanging hours for dollars, but to encode that on chain so that you can gate access to systems like Discord and Linear, that was this sort of mind-opening unlock I'd say that the other two that were interesting is people just using it to gate access to premium versions of their software. So there's a lot of developers in the Farcaster ecosystem that make tools, CastSense, Farcaster Studio, Intelligent, Sonata. There's quite a few. Buoy is a great example. And they're like, yeah, if you want to get, X, Y, and Z features, just like mint time on the Hypersub. And then the nice thing is that they just go and look at the user's balance of time. And if it's greater than 0, they're like, oh yeah, you get the premium version. And if not, you don't. So it's pretty cool. Like the blockchain is the API for them. The third would be Farcaster channels. And this is something that I think I've kind of pioneered with the memes channel, but like Antimo does it with the design channel. Gokin does it with the philosophy channel. There's quite a few other channels that have started doing this as well. And that's been a fun experiment that we're still, I feel like, iterating on and learning about. And again, was totally unexpected. Like had no idea that would be something that people would want to do, when we designed the protocol and when we designed Hypersub, the product.
It's absolutely fascinating, especially like the first one, like really opens a novel way for freelancers or for creators, for actual professionals that are providing services, to provide services in a way that, first of all, it gives them consistent income. And second of all, it also gives a lot of value to the one subscribing. And it's a very unique way of using Hypersub. One question over there when it comes to really growing a Hypersub subscription base, what are some effective ways that you have noticed creators using their audience in order to grow their subscription, like to grow their subscription amount and to actually make a living from Hypersub and grow in the space that they're in?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, in a lot of ways, what we're doing is very new, but it's also very old. And I think that when it comes to growth, I think it's just the same. It's the same answer that you would expect to hear with any Web2 platform. And before the web, any business really, which is like sales and marketing, you got to get the word out. It's like hard work to find your audience. I think there's probably some things that we can do using, people's on-chain history to surface, hey, look, if you subscribed to Alice, you might be interested in Bob, things like that. We're not there yet, but I think it's hard. There's no easy answer. It's hard to grow a subscriber base. It's like you have to be providing enough value, often enough that people decide to part with their money. Because there's a lot of things that you can do, with your money. And so like to be like, oh, well, I really want to get access to this group chat, or I really want to enter in these raffles, or I really want to get this art or whatever. It has to be really compelling. So what I've noticed is the people who've had the most success on Hypersub, like really orient around it. They really use it as the kind of entry point into their whole world. The folks that have had, I think, less success sort of think of it as like one of many things. So they'll be like, oh, I have stuff on, Rodeo, and I have stuff on Zora, and I write things on Paragraph, and I have this Farcaster channel, and I do a Hypersub, and it's like, I think that the struggle there with people is they're like, well, I don't know where to go. Like, I don't know what to do. And so the folks that have really indexed on Hypersub, they use that as like the entry point. It's like the one call to action, and they put a lot of effort into it. It's like, yeah, that really works. So I would just say, like, as far as how to be successful, how to grow an audience, it's like be consistent, be high quality, and create value. Like that's ultimately at the end of the day, like that's what causes people to be retained. There's some, interesting, I don't know, like experiments that people have been doing with campaigns, quests, things like that. It certainly drives a lot of minting activity, but the retention on that stuff is basically zero. I don't see a ton of it. It's like, if you want to make money, that's a worthwhile thing to do. But if you're trying to make money by building an authentic community and retention and engagement is important, then I don't see a lot of value in doing in doing those things, currently. Maybe that'll change in the future, but yeah, I think you're just sharing your work, like being active on Twitter and Farcaster and sharing your work, I think is big. I also think that like cutting people into the upside is a big thing. Like we were talking about the success channel, Meritus, and he does these raffles, he has a lot of money flowing into that contract, but he gives a lot of it out. And I think, again, kind of going back to what we were just talking about, like the sort of synthesis of like, it's not so much about I'm ashamed to talk about how much money I made, or look at me and how much money I made, but hey, look at what we have achieved together. Look at what we've done together. And so when I look at like Peachy or Emeritus, like they're good examples, I think, of creators that have like really indexed on that idea, and they've, I think, had a lot of success as a result. No pun intended.